You know how every town has a legend? A story people whisper about but never say too loud? Well, in Arizona, they've got one of the darkest I've ever heard. They call it the story of the miner's wife. Locals say, if you wander near Slaughter Canyon at night, don't listen too closely to the wind, because if you do, you might hear her. And if she calls your name, you'll never make it out. I swear, just repeating that already gives me chills. So here's how it all started. Back in the mid-1800s, Arizona was crawling with desperate men chasing gold. The gold rush had turned the desert into chaos. Most of them never found anything. One of those men was a miner. Nobody remembers his name anymore, just the husband. A poor man, desperate, broken. He dug, he searched, he gambled everything. And one day, he vanished. Some say he left for California, others swear he died in the desert. But either way, he never came back. And that's where the legend really begins. He left behind a wife and their children, alone, in a shack by the river. At first, she begged for help. Neighbors brought scraps of food, but supplies dry. And in the desert, when you run out of food, there's no mercy. Her children grew weaker. Their cries filled the night, and something inside her began to crack. They say madness comes quietly, first as hunger, then as despair, and finally as a voice in your head. Honestly, I don't even want to imagine what that must have felt like. One night, she snapped. She smothered her children, one by one, and carried their small bodies to the river. She threw them in and watched as the current carried them away. I know, it's almost too much to even say out loud, but that's how the story goes. After that, she didn't run, she didn't hide. She just stayed there. They say she sat by the riverbank day and night, her voice echoing through the canyon, screaming, wailing, begging her children to come back. Until finally, her body gave out, and her soul never left.
Ever since, people avoid that place. But sometimes, hikers wander too close. And that's when they hear it. The screams, the cries. A woman's voice, carried on the wind, bouncing off the canyon walls. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Desert winds make all kinds of sounds, right? Could be the rocks, could be coyotes. Except, some hikers say the voice doesn't just cry. It speaks. It calls your name. The first time I heard this story, I thought, yeah, right, just another ghost tale to scare tourists. But then, I talked to someone who swore they heard it themselves. A park ranger, actually. He told me, plain and simple, it wasn't the wind. The wind doesn't whisper your name. And man, I don't know about you, but that's not something I'd want to argue with. They say if you stand at the riverbank on a still night, you can see her. A woman in torn, dust-stained clothes, hair covering her face, sitting by the water, rocking back and forth. And if you're foolish enough to call out to her, she'll stop and she'll look right at you. And that's where I'm going to stop for now, because the second part of this story is even worse.
So that's the old legend. But here's the part that gets under my skin. Because people say it's not just a story. In recent years, hikers and campers in Arizona still talk about her. Not in hushed, old-fashioned whispers, but in terrified posts online. Yeah, I know, the internet's full of creepypasta, but some of these, they feel different. One guy wrote that he set up camp near the canyon. Around 2 a.m., he woke up to the sound of a woman crying. He thought someone was hurt, lost, maybe a drunk hiker. But when he followed the sound to the riverbank, there was no one there, only ripples in the water. Another story, a couple hiking through the canyon in broad daylight. They both swore they heard a woman's voice, calling their names. And okay, I admit, that part always makes me shiver. Because how would some random legend know your name? They froze, looked around. No footprints, no people, nothing but the sun beating down on the rocks. But the voice came again, this time closer. I once talked to a park ranger. Guy had worked there for years. He told me, "I don't go near that river at night, not anymore. Too many screams in the wind, and the screams don't sound like wind." I asked if he believed the legend. "She's still there, and she's angry." I didn't push him after that. Didn't want to know more. The thing is, part of me doesn't believe in ghosts. I mean, come on, right? We've got science, explanations, wind in the rocks, coyotes, echoes. But then another part of me thinks there's a reason legends survive for over a century. They don't stick around unless something keeps them alive. So, a couple months back, I was in Arizona, and yeah, I did it. I went to Slaughter Canyon. Don't judge me. Curiosity is a dangerous thing. It was just before midnight. The air was so dry, every sound carried forever. The rocks glowed pale under the moon, and the river, it didn't move fast, but it shimmered. And I swear, it already felt wrong. I stood there, listened. At first, nothing, just silence. But the longer I stood, the heavier the air felt, like the canyon was holding its breath. And then it came. A scream, faint at first, distant, but then louder, closer. A woman's voice, full of grief, echoing through the cliffs. My chest froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. I told myself it was just wind, just echoes. But then it called my name. I'm not kidding. I heard it, clear as day, my name. I spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing, just rocks, shadows, the water glistening. And then I saw her at the edge of the river, maybe 20 feet away. A woman. Her dress was shredded, hanging in strips. Her hair covered her face. She was rocking back and forth, like she was holding something in her arms, crying. And then she stopped. Her head turned, and even though I couldn't see her eyes through her hair, I knew she was staring at me. My legs almost gave out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Suddenly, the screams hit all at once, echoing from every side of the canyon like hundreds of voices. I ran, didn't care where, didn't look back, just sprinted through the sand and rocks until my lungs burned. When I finally stopped, she was gone, but the sound, it followed. Even when I got back to my car, I could still hear faint crying in the wind. And I swear, sometimes I still do. So, yeah, call it a story. Call it my imagination. Call it whatever you want. But if you ever go to Slaughter Canyon, don't stay too long. Because if she calls your name, you might not leave at all.